Okay, so I just went to the grocery store. So I was like noticing a lot of things in my life when I grew up. Like my dad would always be like, "Oh, don't tell your mother. She's doing a lot of drinking." And I remember one day where he was making a fire at their mountain home, and she was playing board games with my sister and her boyfriend, and she was like, "Ooh." I was like, "It sounds like she's having fun." And I always remember her trying to lighten him up, and I never knew there was like more of like a wild side to her than I thought. Um, when she would drink her wine, when Grandma was alive, we'd sit on the back deck, and they'd have their wine. I'd smoke my cigarette, and play guitar out there, out in the middle of the woods. And she's like, "Hey, I think we should get Grandma high." I'm like, "Hell yeah!" I'm like, "Do it." I think you should smoke too, Mom. Like, what the hell? But like they were funny because there was something about my grandma and my mom, my you know, her mom, that always they had a very funny sense of humor that it was like twisted, like it was like kind of like a dark sense of humor where they sweet as can be, but sometimes if you mess with their kids, you're done. And B, like they just like it'll come out of the blue, yo. Like sometimes like my mom said stuff where I'm like, well damn, yo, like and and now I'm like, I wonder where I get that from. Um, of like putting people in their place without like cursing them out in a way. And I remember my dad like telling me one day when I was like 16 years old, "Oh, you can say fuck if you want." And I'm like, "Oh my god." Meanwhile, my mom's like coming up behind him, and I notice her there, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like rolling my eyes. She's standing right behind him the whole time. He's flapping his mouth, and yeah, yeah. She goes, "What are you telling our daughter?" And I was like, "Oh, nice one, dude." Meanwhile, he takes me out for coffee years later and hits on a 19-year-old waitress in front of me and invites her to come sit down at the table with me and him. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, paying no attention to my dad. He's very inappropriate. And it all makes sense. So it's just very interesting. And, you know, it's just, you would never think the whole time, you're a kid and you're thinking, okay, these two people are working together and they're working a lot, and then you're like, okay, that's all they do, and then when they spend time together, they're not spending time together at all, and it's very difficult, and yet it's a very good mature realization to be like um, to just understand and realize that I have certain perspectives for certain reasons. Like, yo, for real, like I was the kid at 16 years old coming over from high school, having to cross into right over across the parking lot into the apartment complex where my aunt lived. My mom's youngest, this shit's crazy. My mom's youngest sister is only 5 years older than me. Figure that one out. Who fucking knows? My mom's one out of 8 kids. German side. Like, so I'd go over there because my aunt got knocked up in college and had to leave JMU and come home and marry the guy that she got knocked up with. And then guess what? They both went to work and I took care of their kid. Yo, his first words were Heather. So I'd come home, or I'd come to their house, take care of Mikey, and then feed him, bathe him, write him story time at playtime, and then put him to bed, and then started my homework at 10 o'clock or at midnight, and then had to wait till about midnight for their dumbasses to come home and relieve me so I could go to bed and go to high school the next day. So that was fun. you know, I was always the one when we traveled uh, with the people I grew up with. there was normally, two beds in a room. Like two queen beds or two double beds. And I'd always be like, yo, take the beds, and I'd take the cot. Just stuff like that. Um, I was studying, I'd go to the library. I was never really into story books. I was more into like studying world religions at 13 years old, and I'd check out like 5 books at a time. My mom would be like, put some back, and I'm like, no, I want more, and you know, just different things. I'd read like anthropology and study about all this stuff that none of the other kids would, and I remember one of the field trips we took in. I remember may have been primary school, and we had gone to the what's it called, planetarium. They were like showing us stuff. I was like telling them about all this stuff, and they're like, "How do you know this?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And then the museum, we took a field trip to D.C. And I remember it was the Natural History Museum with them, and they had like a mammoth at the in the center at the time. This was back in the late '80s, and I remember looking at the wall when the tour guide was, bringing his kids around. And I remember looking at uh, literally like this wall that had like a monkey, and then like supposed like the evolution idea of like a monkey, and then like the monkey like evolving to a dude standing. So I'm like, so I remember this is funny because, and then they had the exhibit with the caveman. So I walk over there and I'm like reading the plaque, and I'm like, so I asked the tour guide because she's like, do you kids have any questions? I said, yeah. What about the other civilizations? And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yo. I walk over to the wall and I'm like, yo, you said it goes from monkey to man. I said, did you know that in the future, your man is going to end up thinking like a monkey and he's not going to know what to do? I said, there's other civilizations that you're not including that were a lot longer than the caveman. And she was like, okay, moving on. And I'm like, wow, okay, never mind. So, more tidbits about my life. But yeah, hope you guys are having a good day. Remember to laugh, remember to have fun, and take your meds. All right, bye.